nowhere. Does the Constitution give the president or the executive branch any independent power to modify the state's procedures for conducting federal elections? Despite this clear, very clear constitutional framework, on March 25th, by fiat, Donald Trump issued Executive Order 14248, usurping the state's constitutional power to amend election law. Election integrity is a bipartisan issue. I trust Arizonans and the election laws that we've passed. And it's my job as Arizona's top law enforcement officer to uphold our state's laws and the U.S. Constitution. I will not allow our legislature's lawmaking ability to be trodden upon by a wannabe king. I will not let our legislature be trampled on by Donald Trump. That's why today I have again sued the Trump administration, now for the 9th time. This executive order that we have sued to stop is an unacceptable and unconstitutional intrusion on the rights of states and the power of Congress by an out-of-control executive branch hell-bent on destroying 250 years of precedent and apparently the entire global economy at the same time, if you've seen the stock market today. This unconstitutional executive order also targets the independent bipartisan election assistance commission, and the secretary will talk about that and the importance of it in a moment. Congress required the commission to make its decisions under the standards of bipartisanship in collaboration with the states which actually administer our elections. The executive order eradicates those safeguards and forces the commission to rubber stamp the president's preferences on things like voter registration and voting systems. The elections executive order would also effectively ban states from administering vote-by-mail systems that allow voters to make their choices by election day, upending processes that accommodate more voters, decrease obstacles, and increase voter participation. Arizona's ballot curing process is thrown into doubt by this executive order. The EO would also make it harder for American military service members and their families to vote, an issue that will hit close to home in Arizona, where we are proud to have thousands of veteran military voters serving overseas. The election EO violates the Constitution and interferes with states' inherent sovereignty and their constitutional power to regulate the time, the place, and the manner of federal elections. It also usurps Congress's powers to legislate under the Elections Clause and to appropriate under the Spending Clause because Congress has not chosen to implement the changes that the President seeks to impose by decree. The EO also opens the door for future election changes on the whims of Donald Trump. Or who is to say that a future Democratic president wouldn't take this even further? This elections executive order would take away Arizona's, and again, that means our legislature's power to set our own elections laws. Clearly, Trump only supports states' rights when it suits him. If states don't comply with the coercive threats in this executive order, the Trump administration says it will withhold funds appropriated by Congress and target states with DOJ investigations and potential prosecutions. Let me be clear. This is blatantly unconstitutional, and it is another glaring example of an administration that simply does not believe it has to follow the law. I feel like a broken record at this point, but in the United States of America, we do not have kings, we do not have dictators. We have a constitution and the rule of law. And we are going to make damn sure that Donald Trump and his administration follows the law. And with that, I am happy to turn it over to Secretary Bonner.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Attorney General Mays. As the Attorney General laid out, this executive order on elections boils down to two things. It's going to end up making voting more difficult and less secure, but it is also a violation of the general principle of the rule of law that we appreciate in the United States of America. And it's a larger strategy to erode due process and to consolidate power within the executive branch. We saw in the executive orders and the tariffs that we just noticed going through and really decimating certain parts of our economy already, that the processes that were in place to control trade disputes, these institutions that have been built up, the rules by which these sorts of things are supposed to happen, have been crushed by the Trump administration. So too will individual voting rights and the capacity for states to set their own rules, for state legislatures to engage in that discourse. This is how grown-ups do it. Not by fiat, not because you're upset about results, but there's a process for these things. And that due process is going to be eroded further if this executive order is allowed to stand. And I'm proud that our Attorney General is standing up against this and is fighting like hell for the 9th time against this administration. Currently, we are looking at an executive order that will make our elections less secure. And let me be very clear about why. The decentralized voting system that we enjoy in this country, that has continued to give us transparent and accessible and free elections year in and year out for a very long period of time, is threatened by this executive order. Consolidating these information, consolidating these systems into one makes them, by very definition, weaker. It is the very nature of our decentralized elections in this country that is a strength against foreign interference. One of the other problems that happens with this executive order is the potential that your privacy rights as a citizen could be violated. There are safeguards in the personal identifying information that's held in some of these voting records. And right now, this administration's executive order is asking us elections officials to turn your personal identifying information in these voter records over to the federal government, over to DOGE. And I can tell you right now, I don't want Elon Musk and his crew of incompetence taking those voter rolls away from our office. Arizona's voter information needs to be protected. And this is an important part of our system. And I think it's important to say that we have to look at why it is that this is important for the state as an organizing group. Our states, through the legislative process, are where these rules ought to be made. Rule by fiat, as Attorney General Mays said, is not an American way to do what it is that's being purported to be done here. And it should be no surprise that this administration is trying to rescue an apparently doomed SAVE Act by this fiat, by this executive order. And that's really problematic. But this isn't the first thing, nor do I fear will it be the last thing that this administration has done as against the way we run elections in Arizona. Let me take you back just a couple of months and talk about how secure our election was. 15 bomb threats on election day against Arizona's election systems were levied. We had minimal disruption because we had good cooperation with CISA, with the Department of Homeland Security, and with other federal agencies and partners. They work hand in glove with state agencies and local agencies, municipal agencies, and all those folks who take care of you as voters. Imagine now that our communication with those federal agencies has been completely cut off. We cannot communicate with them. The drawbridge has been laid open, and the security of our elections are in jeopardy because of this administration. This executive order is a continuation of the erosion of the trust that we should continue to have in our elections. And let's be really, really clear about this. Since the 2020 election, and even before, the actors in this administration have been lying about the quality of our elections in the United States of America. They've been lying and establishing an argument for the kidnapping of all of this power. The erosion of trust that we have in one another as Americans, your friends and neighbors, in all of our 15 counties who actually do the work, have been lied against. And the fact sheet that came out with this executive order is another set of those lies, intended to erode trust, confidence, and really to try to suppress the vote. We're going to fight against this. I'm so happy that I've got an Attorney General here in Arizona that's going to look out for you, your voters. We stand together against this executive order, and we're going to cooperate in any way we can with everyone who's fighting against this usurpation of state power and this complete power grab that is totally unacceptable, and I would agree, unconstitutional. Thank you.
Questions?
So Maricopa County just settled and decided that they might be willing to send voter rolls to DHS. I know this is part of this order. What do you think about the county's ability to comply with the order without the Secretary of State involved?
Well, the truth of the matter is, we can raise the alarms, but independently elected constitutional officers can give up the security of their voters if they choose. That's one of the unfortunate circumstances here. But we will attempt to have the kind of communication that will prevent this from happening, but I think this is an unwise choice because we don't know whose hands that data will fall into if it ends up in DOJ or in the Department of Homeland Security. We don't know who they're going to be sharing that with. We have no idea about how that's going to be maintained secure. So I think that's an unwise decision, and I certainly will be. This is the first I've heard of it, but I can tell you right now, I certainly will be giving Recorder Heath a call as soon as we're done here and find out details on that.
I would just add to that, there is no reason for counties to jump the gun on this. As you know, the attorneys general of the Democratic AGs of this country have been doing a lot of winning with our lawsuits, and we have seen federal court after federal court issue TROs or preliminary injunctions stopping the president from engaging in these kinds of unconstitutional acts. In this case, we are seeking a declaratory statement from the court that this is unconstitutional, that it violates law. We are also seeking an injunction, and so there's really no reason for counties to be giving this data.
And it might be a little bit, if I could just add, it might be really problematic for Maricopa County to do that ahead of time. This litigation may very well show that doing so might be illegal and against NABRA or some other regulations. So doing that at this stage of the game is certainly ill-advised and may very well be illegal.
Then perhaps there's a lawsuit against Reporter Heath possible then.
Well, while I'm usually a lawyer out there, she's the lawyer in here, and we'll let the Attorney General make that.
Like we haven't had a chance to
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
we haven't had a chance to look at it again. This is the first time we're hearing of this, so we'll get back to you on that. Wayne.
Given that documented proof of citizenship is already a requirement in Arizona
Yeah.
state elections, is there anything about this executive order that would affect, in that realm, that would affect Arizona elections?
Yeah, that's true. So, a couple of things on that point. Yeah, we already obviously require documented proof of citizenship. One of the things, a couple of the very negative things about this executive order on that front, though, is that documents that are required in the executive order for proof of citizenship do not map out with what we allow in Arizona. So, for instance, we allow birth certificates, we allow naturalization documents, and we allow tribal ID. This could have a tremendous negative impact on our tribes if they are not allowed to provide tribal ID to vote in federal elections. And so that's one thing. And then, as I mentioned before, we are also suing because we think that there's a possibility this could impact our ability to do ballot curing in the state. As you know, we have very close elections in Arizona, and probably the poster child for that. And Arizonans want to be able to cure their ballots after election day.
Is that just because of the, not after election day,
Yeah.
not off deadline?
Correct, is the election day deadline that's in the executive order.
Secretario Fonte, ¿nos puede hacer un resumen en español, por favor?
Bueno, al inicio el presidente no tiene la autorización constitucional para poner un orden de esta manera en efectivo. Estamos hablando de ciertas leyes establecidos por el procedimiento típico y es como está agregando poder que no debe de tener. Y ese es primariamente el problema que tenemos aquí, que el orden es no constitucional. Segundo, tendrá un impacto negativo a nuestros votantes por varias partes, pero lo más importante para mí es que la información de todos los votantes, todos los registrantes, será sometido al gobierno federal. Y eso también es un problema porque podemos asegurar esa información aquí y de esa manera no se debería de dar esa información. Y tercer, nos parece que están arreglando todo el procedimiento de conducir las elecciones en el país. Y el problema que tenemos es que la seguridad de nuestras elecciones también tiene una cosa muy importante, y eso es que no son aparte de un sistema central. O sea, todos los estados tienen su manera de conducir esas elecciones y ese derecho de los estados a hacerlo. Pero también como una parte de seguridad es de que para entregar un problema en uno de los sistemas, los demás están asegurados. Por eso es que es una de las cosas muy importantes sobre, por general, la seguridad de nuestras elecciones. Hay muchos problemas con el orden del presidente Trump y gracias a Dios tenemos la procuradora aquí ayudándonos para poner esta petición en contra del orden ejecutivo del presidente y con favor de Dios tenemos éxito al final.
General Mays, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, I appreciate you being here today. My question is, from the right side, they're always saying that Justin Heath was stripped of all of his powers. He's not doing the same powers as Stephen Richard in the past and yourself when you were at the election. Can you elaborate on this today? And the second one is, are we a sovereign state or are we not? That everybody could walk into Arizona and just demand things?
Well, I'll take that first one first.
Yeah.
As you know, I was the Maricopa
Yes.
County Recorder, and we entered into a sort of a duty-sharing agreement with the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors that frankly was much more consistent with state statute than what had happened in the past. In the past, the Board of Supervisors had surrendered all of its powers, but none of its responsibilities to the county recorder. I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible for folks to understand. That agreement that I entered into was changed a little bit by
Right.
Recorder Richard, and then it was changed again as Recorder Richard was leaving office. This is a choice of the counties. There are no rules regarding how these agreements get entered into. The duly elected recorder got into an agreement with the duly elected Board of Supervisors during that term.
Yes.
It is well within Mr. Heap's power to decide that he wants to see it in a different way. And I think that if he's got a significant enough beef, I think that the courts would be happy to help him out. But at the end of the day,
Yes.
this is a county level issue between one county recorder and that board of 5 supervisors. And I trust that they will do, the right thing for the voters at the end of the day, because that's who actually matters in all of these questions. I don't know if I want to get into the second part of that question. I don't know that I understood it really clearly.
The question is, are we sovereign state? And there's 50 states in the United States. Are you gonna have anybody like from the federal government, anybody just walks into Arizona and demand things, and that's where it stands like the law.
Yeah, well, that's.
The
a legal
constitutional,
question.
yeah.
I don't- I mean,
Yeah.
I have a license. but
Well,
we don't
that's
do
why,
that.
like,
Yeah.
those are the stuff that I get asked a lot, and especially by students throughout the country, by the way, just to let you know.
Sure, I mean, that's very much what this lawsuit is about, and
Right.
all 9 of the lawsuits that we have filed, which is, the attorneys general, the Democratic AGs of this country are standing up for the rights of Arizonans. We're standing up to protect our citizens, from an out-of-control, president who wants to be a king. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I think we are in, we haven't been in a situation as perilous as we are now since the Civil War. That's where we're at. And so, when the president, Elon Musk, Doge, engage in unconstitutional or illegal behavior, I am going to do everything I can and use every tool available to me to stop them on behalf of the people of the state. So the answer is yes, we are a sovereign state. We have the state's rights under the Constitution. This lawsuit is very much like many of the other lawsuits about the separation of powers, that it is actually only Congress has the right to preempt the states in our ability to set the rules and regulations for our elections. And in the Constitution, and our founding fathers wanted for the states to set the rules for our elections.
And to be clear,
Yes.
for your readers or
Yes.
viewers. if
Well,
you
a
go
lot
to
of them
the-
are students, just to
go
let you know,
well, they're
Secretary of
students.
State.
Go to the Constitution.
Yes.
Go to Article 1,
Yes.
Section 4, and you will see that it speaks to the time, place, and manner established by the states, and then it gives Congress the ability to do a little bit of a jimmying around if they want. Not the president. This is an Article 1 power. The Congress has the power, with the states having the big bulk of it. So, I agree with the Attorney General. This is a real problem, but it's a constitutional problem, and I hope the students can learn from this.
Thank you.
Yes.
Want
Very
to
good.
clarify, are you filing this in district court here in Phoenix?
No, we're not. We're filing in Massachusetts. So,
Why?
why, obviously, we make decisions as AGs about, the best, place to file a lawsuit, and there's some strategy involved in that, obviously. And then, there are lead states, involved, in this case, and that's where they chose to file, this particular lawsuit.
Along those lines, who's the Arizona plaintiff? Is it the state of Arizona, the
Yes.
Secretary of State's office,
Oh.
both?
It's the state, it's the state.
Okay, and how does it fit in with the other lawsuits that have been filed against this executive order, in the strategy wise?
All the other lawsuits that I
Yes.
filed, look.
On this election year?
Oh,
Yes,
on
on
the
this
other-
EO.
Oh, the other, you wanna
Yes.
take that?
Yeah,
Okay,
so the other executive orders, the other lawsuits against this executive order were obviously filed by different parties. They have a little bit of a different take on this, but there is a general consistent theme here. I think it was very important for the states that are involved, the attorneys general that are involved, the other secretaries of state that are involved in this, that we speak with as unified a voice as possible. But I will also say this, when you get to looking at how much work went into this and who was involved, I think our gut, we knew what was supposed to happen right off the bat, but we wanted to make sure to have a very clear and unified voice on this. And so I give credit not just to all of the other attorneys general, but to Attorney General Mays and her team here, of very competent, really solid legal minds. And I think they made the right choices positioning this lawsuit the way it has.
Yeah, we've got, as states, we can't necessarily, rely on other organizations to protect the interests of our states. We are increasingly seeing judges, make decisions about whether or not to, for instance, issue nationwide injunctions or just injunctions for the states that sue. So, there are some judges that are coming to the conclusion, for instance, that it's only the states who file the lawsuits who should be covered, which is gonna be a sad thing for those states with Republican AGs who refuse to sue, to stand up for their citizens. But it's really important for us as AGs and the top law enforcement officers of our states to file these lawsuits. Barbara and then Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, and assuming that you're granted the preliminary injunction, you probably are, odds are that you will, it comes back to who's gonna make him stop? I mean, law enforcement is there to make him abide by the, order,
Well, it's.
by the injunction.
Yeah, this is, we've obviously, had to confront this problem on several occasions already. This is why I have said I believe we're in the midst of a coup in this country, because we already have a president of the United States who has on multiple occasions violated a federal court order. What the Democratic AGs are doing is we are going back into court whenever that happens and getting what's called a motion to compel. And usually we are seeing the administration comply. But we did, for instance, see in the federal funding freeze case where we got a temporary restraining order, an immediate PRO against it, we saw them fail to comply with that. We also saw them fail to comply with it with regard to FEMA funds. We had to go back in and get another order from the judge saying to President Trump and Doge, no, I meant what I said. And so we will, if we have to, we will continue to do that, and I'll confer with the Secretary of State about this going forward and have conversations about whether or not the administration is complying.
So intersection here with ongoing refunding of votes case, so I just was curious, how you anticipate this executive order in this litigation to impact, I guess the question.
So which one of them you told me to vote their cases? Because there's,
Yeah, I know, there's a few.
right, there's two active ones
I
right
might,
now.
on this one, I might have Josh Bender, who's my Solicitor General, come in and answer the question. So could you repeat it for us,
Yeah.
Josh, you wanna come forward?
If you could speak louder a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, the Be Familiar Votes case, in Sajari and the Supreme Court regarding like citizenship and, citizenship checks, reporters checking databases for citizenship. How I guess this executive order information will, interplay, I guess, with that, litigation.
Thank you, General.
Yeah, it's a hard question. I was looking back at that Ninth Circuit opinion today, and like the caption takes up 5 pages. So how they're gonna interact is tough. I think what the Attorney General and her office has done in that case is largely defend Arizona law. And that's what, we're doing here. And so exactly how those two things will intersect, we'll see. But, I think the important thing, we're trying to basically, the will of the people and the legislature is what we're doing.
If I could just piggyback on the Solicitor General's commentary here. The defense of Arizona law is really at the crux of this. This is about, as the Attorney General said, states' rights and the state's ability to do these things. It boggles the mind that conservatives, who typically make those arguments, are the ones saying, no, let's take all of the power and give it to one executive person. Not to the states, not to the state legislatures, not to the people who are closest in the rulemaking process to the citizenry. We are defending Arizona's laws on documented proof of citizenship. Whether we agree with it or not, it is the law in Arizona, and we are respecting that. We are defending some of these laws that we may personally not completely agree with, but at the end of the day, all of us swore an oath to uphold and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and the laws of Arizona. This is our job. And so I think the parallels are really close. You're talking about really technical procedural questions right there. And if you want to catch him afterwards, you probably have a longer
Yeah, we're
conversation.
still looking at it.
One more.
We're still looking at it.
Well, we can be
Two, we'll go two more.
Secretary Fontes, you talked about the level of security that was so important on election day and how that was working with the federal government on that. Do you find there's concerns that that would not be the case with this administration, given their stance on different things over the last couple of months, and that might impact some of these counties wanting to follow along with what he's doing?
This administration doesn't want our elections to be secure. I come to that conclusion because of what they've done, not because of what they've said. This administration would invite foreign interference, would invite foreign hacking, and would invite folks that would do our democracy harm. This is based on what they've done, not on what they've said. The fact that my agency can no longer talk to federal law enforcement and federal threat assessment and federal investigative agencies to help preserve and protect our election systems, our networking systems, our physical facilities for elections, that tells me more than any rhetoric about wanting secure elections ever will. I don't think this administration wants safe and secure elections, and their actions speak much louder than any of their words on that. That's a short enough answer since we only have one more. Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the impact on tribal nations. Can you just elaborate on that and kind of like that stake there in Arizona?
Absolutely. Look, we've got a tough enough time making sure that folks in our most rural communities, particularly indigenous Arizonans, have access to the ballot. And our documented proof of citizenship requirements here in Arizona do allow for tribal IDs. We've got 22 reservations here in Arizona. These are our Arizona voters, and we know how to maintain these voter rolls. Now all of a sudden, apparently, the President of the United States doesn't understand how these things work and how these, our first Americans, are going to be just dismissed out of hand if they don't have exactly the kind of requirements that other people will have, even though the state of Arizona has already determined that this is what it ought to be. And so I think it's disrespectful to the Native American community. I think it's dismissive of the states and the laws and the procedures we've established. And I think it ignores all of the work that we've done on the ground over the years to include all of those Native voters and make sure that they have access to doing the exact same thing that every other American citizen has. This is a step backwards, and it's really disturbing, and it's frankly upsetting. I take it personally when our own neighbors here in Arizona are being dismissed out of hand just because they happen to be a member of a tribe.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
thank you.
for coming out, Virginia.
And so much.
Yes, it is.
Happy birthday.